Today's date is December 8th, and it's 2020. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining. I'm going to call the meeting to order, and I would like to just do a quick roll call. So I'll just go through my screen and recognize folks. So we know Chief Priest has joined us through audio. I see Counselor Ben Winograd, Town Manager Matt Hart. Let's see, Chief Bernard Riddick, Assistant Chief Tara, Counselor Chris Williams. So forgive me, Cynthia, it's Corporation Counsel Deputy Cynthia.
Assistant Corporation Counsel.
Okay, Assistant Corporation Counsel Cynthia, and is it Latour?
Yes, Latour, yes.
All right. And I see Corporation Counsel Dallas Dodge, Assistant Chief Dan Coppinger, Councilman Lee Gold, Deputy Mayor Leon Davidoff, Mayor Sherry Cantor, Councilor Beth Kerrigan, Miss LeBreau, our town clerk. Let's see. Forgive me, Hugh, firefighter Hugh, and I don't see the last name, so forgive me if I'm not saying it correctly.
That's perfect.
Assistant Chief O'Callahan.
Thank you. Let's see. Jen Evans, so we're all good with the video, and firefighter, forgive me if I'm messing up the title, Mike Siniscali. Did I leave out anybody? Okay, great. All right, so before we start, I do want to start off with some remarks. This is the 12th month of a very trying year. And I do just want to remember those that we've lost to the COVID pandemic. I also want to recognize those who are hospitalized and still fighting this battle. I also want to recognize those who are recovering. And I also want to recognize those who are waiting for results from a recent test that was taken and perhaps are experiencing some anxiety based on those results coming back. I also want to recognize our public safety staff for all of the hard work, all of the hard unaccounted hours that you all have put in since the beginning of this pandemic. It goes without saying that you are always at the front line just by the nature of your profession, but especially for 2020, you have just given it your all. You've gone above and beyond, and I just want to, sit here tonight and recognize all of your efforts, the leadership that our public safety officials have shown, and I'm sure have stood with all of you during your time of need and anything else that was expected of you. So I just really want to express that to all of you, because I know many times you do things without expecting anything in return. And every now and then, it's just good to hear that you're appreciated. And we really thank you for all the hard work that you're doing for this town and doing for all of those that you provide services to. So, thank you. All right. The first up, one other thing. The agenda in front of you, I do want to switch it around a little bit because we have about an hour. We do have a town council meeting following this, but I do want to give the attention to our proposed ordinance establishing the Civilian Police Review Board. So what I would like to do is, following communications for the September 2nd, 2020 minutes, I would then like to go right into that agenda item, which is 4A. And then if we have time left, we can then go into the staff reports. Do I have any objection? No. Okay. Oh, and then one other thing, I'm going to take a point of privilege here, just to congratulate Assistant Chief Coppinger for all of your years of service. Wow, the 30 years that you've given this town, and I'm sure above and beyond Assistant Chief, nothing but huge congratulations to you for all the service that you've provided to this town. I'm sure all the friendships that you've made along the way. I just wish that you have a wonderful and great retirement, and every now and then come back and lend us your professionalism and your guidance. So with that said, it's well deserved for you, but I just personally want to say thank you for all that you've done.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you. And thank you, all of you, very much.
You're very welcome. Okay, so with that, I'll move to the communications for the September 2nd minutes. Matt, did you want to say anything about that? Otherwise, we can just move right into 4A for the proposed ordinance.
Matt Hart, Town Manager. Good evening, everyone. Madam Chair, those are just informational only. The full council will approve the minutes.
All right, wonderful. So let's just go ahead and move into the proposed ordinance establishing a civilian police review board. That was sent out to everyone yesterday by Corporation Counsel, Mr. Dodge. And so I believe Assistant Chief Tara, you're going to kick it off, or Mr. Town Manager?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Matt Hart, Town Manager. Just would like to make a few introductory comments if I could, and then Corporation Counsel's office will walk us through the draft. As the committee knows, this is something we've been working on for some time now, at your direction and under your leadership, following the tragic events earlier this year, as well as our state legislature's efforts to promote police accountability. You prepared an action plan looking at various steps and various things we'd like to do to build upon the good working relationship that our police department has with our community. And one of the items we noted was a review of our existing citizen complaints review board, which is established currently pursuant to police department policy, and instead converting that into an ordinance that would be adopted by the council, and that would represent best practices in the state and nationwide. And Assistant Chief Tara conducted considerable research. You may recall this binder that I received with looking at over two dozen communities and their ordinances, communities in Connecticut and around the country. So want to thank the police department, the chief and the assistant chief for their research, as well as Corporation Counsel for their work to present what, in my opinion, is a very responsible and I think would be an effective piece of legislation for your consideration. So that's my intro, Madam Chair, and would suggest you call on Corporation Counsel Dodge next.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. So I'll toss it over to you, Mr. Dodge.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And I also wanted to begin by thanking the town manager as well as Chief Riddick, Chief Tara, and also Chief Coppinger for the opportunity to work with them on this ordinance. It's really been a pleasure to learn more about their operations. and to also have their perspective as we've prepared this. And I think it's been a very good collaborative effort between our departments. As the town manager discussed, this started receiving significant attention, I think, over the summer due to some of the tragic events that occurred in this country, which culminated in Connecticut in the legislature adopting House Bill 6004 during a special session earlier this year, which is otherwise known as the Police Accountability Bill. And as you're all aware, and we've summarized it before, I believe, in front of this committee and also before the council, the Police Accountability Bill addressed a number of aspects of police operations. And the section on civilian review boards was actually relatively brief and is not particularly specific in the manner in which it allows municipalities to create these boards. And so just, I want to sort of pull back to what the legislation did. And the legislation was permissive. It permits town councils or towns to create civilian police review boards. And there's a few parameters that are established in it, but it's sort of a broad mandate to towns to be able to fashion civilian police review boards in a way that works best for them. The legislation, frankly, in terms of what West Hartford could do, didn't really add much. It required towns, if they're going to create a civilian review board, to do so by ordinance. But for West Hartford, under our town charter, we already would have been required to if we want to create this as a truly independent and separate board, to do so by ordinance, which is what we're doing now. And so again, it was sort of a broad mandate to towns in terms of what it allowed them to do. The minimum requirements under the statute, and I apologize, I had it on my screen just a minute ago. Under the statute, the ordinance any ordinance created must at a minimum establish the scope of authority for the Civilian Police Review Board, the number of members of the Civilian Police Review Board, the process for the selection of board members, the term of office for board members, and the procedure for filling any vacancy in the membership. And that's pretty much it in terms of the requirements for the Civilian Review Board. And so I'll now turn it over to Assistant Corporation Counsel Latour, who's assisted in drafting this with myself and also with the manager and the police department. And she'll walk the council through the ordinance that we've drafted. And my suggestion, Madam Chair, would be that we reserve any questions for the end of Attorney Latour's presentation.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. The proposed Civilian Police Review Board is an independent 7-member board established with the purpose of promoting public confidence in the professionalism and accountability of the West Hartford Police Department. The board is charged with providing a timely, fair, and impartial review of internal affairs investigations of complaints made against sworn police officers. This board serves a strictly advisory role, and it is for the board to determine if they are in agreement or disagreement with the outcome of internal affairs investigations against internal affairs investigation of complaints made against sworn police officers. The ordinance currently states that 4 of the 7 members shall be electors of the town. However, the town's charter does require that all members be electors of the town. As such, this provision will be amended. In addition to the 7 members, there will also be 3 alternates, and those appointments will serve staggered terms in order to ensure that there is not a situation in which everyone's term expires within the same year. Potential appointees will also be required to consent to and undergo a background check prior to appointment. And once appointed, members will be required to complete a mandatory training curriculum that will be developed by the town manager and the police chief. While sworn police officers will not serve as voting members of the board, the police chief will appoint staff liaisons who can participate in proceedings in order to provide a professional perspective on police procedure. Furthermore, the town manager will also designate someone to serve as a staff liaison in order to provide the board with administrative support. After the board has completed its review and discussion of all the materials relevant to an investigation, the board is being asked to make one of two findings. So the board will vote on a recommendation to either sustain or remand a completed internal affairs investigation. In the event of a recommendation to remand, the board will make a finding as to the thoroughness, the completeness, accuracy, and objectivity of the investigation. Something that this ordinance also does is it establishes a time frame in which these matters are to be heard. The board has 60 days from the date a complaint appears on the agenda to make a determination. Failure to vote will be deemed a recommendation to sustain the findings of the internal affairs investigation. And if at any point in the review process, the Civilian Review Board receives a notification from the Corporation Counsel's office or police chief that litigation is pending in a matter that is within the board's purview, or there is an anticipated proceeding in court, the Civilian Review Board shall defer the review pending resolution of litigation or claim, or take no further action in accordance with any settlement agreement that the parties enter into. The Public Act concerning police accountability also authorizes the Office of the Inspector General to make a written request to a Civilian Review Board to stay and take no further action in connection with any proceeding that is the subject of an investigation or criminal prosecution that is being conducted by that office. So the Town Civilian Review Board will have to stay any proceedings to the extent that they get a notification from the Office of the Inspector General. And finally, the Civilian Review Board will also be responsible for preparing an annual report for the council on its activities and policy recommendations. So that's really a broad overview of the function of the Civilian Police Review Board that is being presented to you today. Dallas, I'm not sure if there's anything additional that you would like to add.
Thank you, Cynthia. I did, and I should have done this at the beginning too. I want to thank Cynthia for her contribution as well. Her perspective, having previously served in the Corporation Counsel's office in Hartford, was particularly helpful in drafting this ordinance. They do have a existing Civilian Review Board in Hartford that has been active for some time, and so it was very helpful to have Cynthia's experience, having worked with that Civilian Review Board as we drafted this. The one thing I want to also mention is that under state statute, our police department currently already has a policy that is fairly detailed for how it deals with civilian complaints. And this new ordinance tries to sort of work within that framework where the police department would continue to conduct its internal affairs investigation in relatively the same manner in which it's done, and PD can comment on that more if they like. And the Civilian Review Board would simply be reviewing the work that is done by the internal affairs investigators and making a recommendation to the chief in terms of whether that should be sustained or whether perhaps further work is necessary. And I think that particularly within the structure of a police department, due to sort of the unique nature of the command structure, it's very important for the police chief to maintain command authority over his officers. And we obviously also, there's an intermeshing here with with how complaints are dealt with, and also with our CBA agreements as well. And so this is really providing sort of an independent advisory review for the police chief as his department investigates complaints that are filed by civilians. And so, Madam Chair, I don't know if, my suggestion, I think, would be, before we go on to questions, I don't know if Chief Riddick might want to add some comments as well.
Chief Riddick, would you like to add some comments, or Assistant Chief Tara?
For you, Madam Chair, I just want to thank Corporation Counsel for their efforts in drafting this document, as well as the Herculean work that Assistant Chief Tara did to look at that binder and get a true perspective of the amount of hours he put into this. I truly appreciate that, and I'm sure the Public Safety Committee does too. I really don't have much to add. I'm pleased and in agreement with the document. There was some give and take in the CRB. There were some things that I sort of prefer to have, but understanding transparency, understanding the need for the community to be involved. I think this charter provision that we're going to be hopefully approving at some point, you'll be approving at some point, is fair, it's equitable, and it's very well done. And I think the citizens will be pleased with how this goes forward.
Thank you, Chief. Assistant Chief Tara, would you like to add anything?
Madam Chair, through you, I agree with, there's a lot of work done on this. The Corporation Counsel did a great job, and I agree with the Chief's statements and his recommendations. We had, in the beginning, when I first got here, we had one in place, but this takes it to another level. I think it shows a great deal of effort and concern on the police department and the town's part. Thank you.
You're welcome. I would just like to say that I thank all of you for working on this document. I know we started out in the summer. It was a huge document, quite frankly, intimidating to have to go through this document on top of your everyday responsibilities. And so I commend you all for really, digging through it and making sure that it was a good document to present. I know a lot of work and effort went into it, and I'm sure a lot of collaboration occurred among different towns and other cities. I know you mentioned the city of Hartford, and I'm sure there were others. So I just really want to express, my gratitude to all of you for really putting in the work to present the document and to present what we've received here tonight for questions and discussion. So what I'm going to do is open it up right now for questions. I know many of you have many questions, and the hour right now is 6:55. So I don't see any hands up, so feel free to put your hands up so that we can begin this discussion. We'll start off with Mayor Cantor, and I believe Deputy Mayor Davidoff.
Thank you. I also want to first extend my thank you to Assistant Chief Tara, to Assistant Chief Coppinger, to our Chief Riddick, Deputy Corporation Counsel, Assistant Deputy Corporation Counsel Latour, and Corporation Counsel Dallas Dodge. This is I think a really, really good document, and I think it does what the goal when we started this discussion, and even before the discussion in the summer, there was thought of we needed to address this. I remember the town manager talking to me about the fact that we needed to look at the Civilian Review Board because it really wasn't representative of that civilian perspective. I do have a question in one part. Now, we did receive this as a document to work off of, and obviously we're going to be talking about it again, then bringing it as we would with an ordinance to the council for public hearing. But and I'm sorry if this was mentioned or explained somewhere, but I want to know if in the this was in actually Mr. Dodge's email. I said the ordinance establishes an independent 7-member civilian police review board that will be responsible for reviewing the completed internal investigation of any complaint received by the police department. Does that mean any or all, or does it mean any but not all? Can there be situations where that the board will not take up a complaint because they either don't think it merits a further look or so anyway, that's my question.
Mr. Dodge?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Madam Mayor. The board we actually did have some discussion in an earlier draft of this, but it changed following it back and forth with us in the police department. We had felt that it might be appropriate to restrict, not to restrict, but to limit the review of the review board to serious complaints. But there were some difficulties in sort of defining that. And we didn't want to get into a situation where, somebody has a different opinion of what's a low-level complaint versus a high-level complaint. And so, felt as though it made more sense to simply have the review board review all of them. And they would be required to do so. As Attorney Latour noted in her comments, once they received the completed internal completed internal investigation, they would be required to act on that within 60 days after having received it. And if they failed to act on it within 60 days, the investigation would be deemed sustained. So I think to that extent, if they failed to take action, the consequence of that would be that the complaint was sustained without further review. There are certain circumstances under which the proceedings may be stayed. As Attorney Latour pointed out, one circumstance might be if there were pending litigation. There also might be circumstances where the police chief might request a stay of proceedings due to an active criminal investigation. And one thing that's not mentioned in the ordinance, however, is set forth in statute, is under the Police Accountability Bill, there's a new office of, I believe the title of the position is Inspector General, although I might have that wrong. But in any event, there's a new independent prosecutor who's tasked with investigating and prosecuting criminal allegations of criminal misconduct by police officers. And if that state's attorney requested that a proceeding be stayed due to their investigation, it would be required to be stayed. So there are certain circumstances where we may temporarily where the board might temporarily be required not to move forward with a complaint. But generally speaking, every complaint would go to the Civilian Review Board, and PD might be in a better position to comment in terms of sort of the volume and number and types of complaints that we could expect the Civilian Review Board to receive.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Madam Chair. Can I ask one more question? Yeah, that's actually what I wanted to ask the chief, and so I think he's going there. So again, this is Mayor Cantor.
Through you, Madam Chair, just to provide a little additional information, under our current construct of the CRB, internal investigations that started by the chief or within the police department do not come under the purview of the current CRB. So we thought it was very important for transparency. For example, if there's an internal violation for policy and procedure that did not come from the outside from a civilian, but came from a supervisor or myself, that internal affairs complaint and investigation has not historically gone before the CRB. So you're actually missing out. So in our discussions with Corp Counsel, the town manager, and the rest of the command staff, the 2 assistant chiefs, we thought it was very important that the public view that. We have nothing to hide. Here it is. So that's part of why the complaints are going forward. And then secondly, to the mayor's specific point, minor complaints that come in, for example, a person comes in regarding an officer's behavior, I thought the officer was wrong or rude. and the supervisor speaks to that person, and that's resolved right there to the satisfaction of the individual, that's not something that's going to rise to an internal affairs investigation. There's not going to be a report. There'll be documentation internally, but that'll be it. So I hope that provides some clarity and an answer to the mayor's question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thank you very much, Chief. Yes, it does clarify. And could you give an idea of volume? What you would expect in a sort of a...
Yes, and thank you. And part of our conversation did circle around volume. And I will give a point of comparison. In my time in Waterbury averaged throughout my tenure roughly 70 to 80 complaints a year, whereas West Hartford this year we have 10 so far. Last year I think we had 8. I think the year before that it was maybe 9. So we're not talking about a huge amount of complaints that occurred throughout the year, which would tie up the CRB, which would be more inclined to reduce that volume. So it seems to be very manageable.
Mrs. Mayor Cantor again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. Deputy Mayor Davidoff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Deputy Mayor Davidoff speaking. I want to first thank Corp Counsel, Ms. Latour, Mr. Dodge, Chief Riddick, Assistant Chief Tara, and Assistant Chief Coppinger for taking on this task and producing this document. With that said, I do have 2 specific questions. In Section 5-130, where it talks about the membership, it notes that a member of the Civilian Review Board shall be a sworn officer of the police department. Is any consideration given as to whether or not a retired officer would be allowed to serve on this board?
Interrupt you for 1 second. You're not coming in clearly, so when you're speaking, it's kind of coming in intermittently.
I'll repeat my question. You hear me?
Doing the same thing.
Can you hear me? Forget.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Mr. Dodge.
thank you, Madam Chair. I do think I was able to make out Councilor Davidoff's question, which was whether any consideration had been given to whether retired police officers would be able to serve. And as the ordinance is currently drafted, retired police officers would be permitted to serve on the board. Of course, that would be subject to vote of the council in terms of whether it was appropriate to appoint that a retired officer or not. And I think, I think there's a number of arguments for why in some circumstances that may be a very good idea, especially if a retired officer was able to provide some additional perspective on some additional police perspective for the other members of the review board. I don't know if maybe somebody else from the if anybody from PD wanted to add on to that. But as it's currently drafted, retired members could serve.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, retired members can serve, and I'm not sure if Dallas mentioned this or not. I lost connection for a second, but they can serve after 3 years. So we would want someone that was retired but away from the police department for 3 years, and then they'd be able to serve. Also, part of our consideration when we discussed this was the fact that a person could be convicted of a crime, and that would not preclude them, based upon the committee's decision, to serve on the CRB. So I think as far as a balance, I think that's fair on both sides. I shouldn't say both sides. Fair for the process.
Thank you, Chief Riddick. Deputy Mayor, did you have other questions? Mr. Gold.
One more question. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can hear me?
Yes, you may go ahead.
All right. Thank you. In Section 5-131B, the sentence that starts, the town manager may designate a departmental liaison appointed to the police chief pursuant to the section to serve in such role. I don't even know what's supposed to be written there. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Okay, did that come in clear for the staff to answer? No.
Madam Mayor, if I can suggest to Councilor Davidoff, it might, you might want to mute your computer and perhaps call into the meeting for audio. And so maybe it would make sense to return to the deputy mayor when he's able to call in. But I couldn't make out the question. I apologize.
Okay, thank you. And just for clarification, I'm Madam Chair. I don't want there to be any confusion. Not the mayor. So Deputy Mayor Davidoff, are you going to try to call in? Because I don't want anything to be missed. I want your questions to come in clearly so that everybody understands and gets it. All right. While you're calling in, Deputy Mayor, I'm going to go to Councilor Gold and then Councilor Williams.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and through you. I just wanted to go back and touch on Section 5130A, and specifically the line that Mr. Davidoff had spoken about. I know he was asking about retired officers, but the way it's written, is it to assume that it's officers just within West Hartford, or does that extend beyond the town? And could it also extend to an officer who's active in a different town but presently resides in West Hartford? That was ultimately the question I had. And then maybe some clarification on Section B, which I think Mr. Davidoff was looking to, and 4, which seems to allow a full background check to any person or individual who's serving on the CRB. Is that accurate?
Mr. Dodge.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. With regard to the first question, as the ordinance is currently drafted, it would only restrict West Hartford police officers from serving on the Civilian Review Board. So if there was somebody living in West Hartford who was a sworn police officer in another town, under the ordinance, that person would be eligible for appointment to the board. I think, you know, the concern with it, I don't think that the concern is, you know, although this is ultimately a policy decision for the council, you know, I think that there's probably a higher concern with a member of the same police department serving on the board in judgment of his brother officer, his or her fellow officers. You know, that concern is probably less with regard to somebody who's a officer in another town, although I can certainly understand that there might be some hesitation about that. So I think ultimately that's a policy consideration for the council. I would also, and I should clarify something too, that Chief Riddick mentioned that retired officers would need sort of a 3-year cooling off period after retiring before they were eligible for appointment. And he is correct that we did discuss that. However, I realized in reading the draft, I don't think it made it into our final version that we shared with the council. And so we can make that change going forward. I do think it makes sense. In terms of the requirement for a background check, that's something that we had significant discussion over. And I think that, you know, from PD's perspective, and I don't want to necessarily speak for them, but you know, given the sensitivity of some of the matters that will come before this board, and you know, this is going to be one of the only town boards or commissions that has sort of almost an investigatory role that it plays, where it's almost semi-adjudicative. And given the sensitivity of some of the matters that may come before it, you know, there should be an effort to determine whether somebody who's appointed to it has whether there's a criminal history. Now, we are sensitive to, I think, particularly, you know, obviously, not all crimes are equal, and we didn't want to get into trying to define what type of criminal conduct might preclude somebody from serving on the board. And so, you know, as an example, I think that there might be a circumstance where, let's say that somebody, you know, a decade ago committed some sort of minor larceny or something like that. I don't think that, you know, the council might decide that that's not something that they think should preclude them from serving on the board. However, on the flip side, if somebody had a recent conviction of, you know, a recent conviction of sexual assault or something like that, that might be something where the council wouldn't want to appoint that person to a board that had oversight over police officers. And in drafting it, we want to be cognizant of, you know, the last thing we'd want would be somebody getting appointed, then having the background check, and then an issue coming up. And I think that could be embarrassing for the individual potentially, and also, you know, it's sort of an awkward position too, where at what point is the background check conducted? And so the solution that we came up with was that, you know, before somebody's appointed, that they would have to consent to and have the background check conducted prior to appointment. And at that point, depending on the results of the background check, if something came up embarrassing from the individual's past, which perhaps they hadn't remembered, or which, you know, the mayor or other members of the council felt, you know, was a reason for not appointing them, at that point, they simply, you know, the council could make the decision to simply not appoint them. And so that's how we kind of tried to address that. You know, I do think that the background checks are an important issue. But it was a little difficult sort of figuring out exactly how to handle it from an operational and sort of timing. Madam Chairman, I forgot the question that I was answering. So if you wouldn't mind restating it.
Yes, my question was, how often will they meet? And you started to explain they would determine that at the first meeting, and then you were elaborating.
Right. Thank you, Madam Chairman. They would set a regular schedule of meetings, and in addition to that, they could obviously meet in a special meeting if it was appropriate and necessary. And so that would be established by the board in terms of what their meeting schedule would be.
Thank you, Mr. Dodge. My other question is probably for you. Ms. Hart, did you have a comment?
I'll wait until you're all set, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Chief Riddick, I had another question around the internal investigation. So it appears that the internal investigators would be conducting the investigation of these matters. So I had a question. Do you anticipate, would there ever be a time when you would have to bring in an outside investigator to investigate?
Through you, Madam Chair, and don't laugh when I provide this answer. Yes, if an investigation included me. Outside of that, nothing else besides that would I would see a need for an outside investigator, unless it was, you know, again, personally with me that I was doing something that would warrant that, or if there was a culture, a systemic culture throughout the entire police department that was identified, then you would probably bring in an outside investigator.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Mr. Hart, before I go to you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, were you all set with your questions? Did you have any additional questions that you wanted to speak on?
You got anything, I'm all set.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hart?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Matt Hart, Town Manager. I just wanted to speak to the question the Deputy Mayor raised in the chat feature. I responded, but I'm not sure everyone saw it. I believe he picked up on a simple typo. The sentence is missing a word. I'll ask Assistant Corporation Counsel Latour to confirm, but I believe the sentence at issue should read, the town manager may designate a departmental liaison appointed by, I believe it's missing the word by the police chief pursuant to this section to serve in such role. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification and for the correction. Okay, do we have any other questions on this document? We are at 7:23. Okay. All right, hearing none, let's go ahead and proceed to the remaining items on the agenda, where we would go back to staff reports. And Chief Priest, I believe you're up.
How about now? You got me?
Yes.
Okay, outstanding. Good evening, everyone. I will make this as abbreviated as I possibly can. I just wanted to start by thanking everyone who has reached out to me regarding the passing of my dad. Alzheimer's is a terrible, it's an emotional disease, and the support for my family situation from many of you has been greatly appreciated, so thank you for that. I have uploaded a written report for your review. I'll take just a few seconds to cover some things. Obviously, right now, we received a report earlier today that our community's case rate for the COVID surge is at 23.9. That's high, and the overall state rate, based on some information earlier tonight, was released at 8.65. So we are truly in a surge. It's very impactful to our community. It affects our call volumes. I've taken the liberty of adding in some additional visual reports as part of my written report that I've provided in there. It shows some trend lines to see that we are truly trending up, and that affects our responders on the front lines and our community's overall stress. Our public safety COVID testing program is being fully utilized. We're very proud of it and thankful to those who helped set it up and who are sustaining and improving it. It's being used as a model across the state of Connecticut for other agencies. We're continuing to work collaboratively with the police department on that, having recently added some officers to the testing, as well as our planning recovery officer and community support officer are highly engaged in working with that program. So in terms of the fire department overall, we have 4 people that are out. 2 are currently returning soon, and while many are reportedly minor illnesses, we do have one employee situation that we're monitoring more closely than others. We have a stable workforce, but we struggle, as do many, with COVID fatigue and obviously the vacancies that we had existing and our hiring challenges and trying to support the needs of the department specific to planning and administration. And we have approximately 20% of our workforce that's eligible to retire by this end of the fiscal year. So we have no mass exodus expected, but it's certainly a possibility, and we're actively looking at our hiring strategies and striving to attract the largest, most diverse candidate pool that we possibly can. So on December 1st, and I might be taking a little bit of Chief Riddick's report here, but Public Safety Dispatch began processing medical calls using in-house emergency medical dispatch. I think I've spoken with this group about it before, but it's getting triaging calls, it's providing callers with pre-arrival instructions, and ensuring that the right EMS resource is dispatched to the right patient in the right amount of time. So we're adjusting, we're working out some very minor issues and adapting. Some major step forward for our town that will allow us to better use our EMS resources and will help us have some better data in-house about how our EMS response is handled in town. Headed by our Fire Marshal's office, we were selected as one of 250 departments across the state of Connecticut to serve as a Phase 2 pilot community for a community risk assessment. So I'm pleased with that. I look forward to keeping you updated, but that will provide us with more data and result in a community risk reduction plan. We've been working, and our deputy emergency manager has been working on reinvigorating our civilian emergency response team, which is really kind of a great way of engaging our community members who are willing to assist, and we're looking at a spring implementation of that. And then we're under an incredible amount of rapid change and stressful circumstances. I'm still pleased, though, that our members of the local are still engaged in other ways of supporting the community, and they'll be evidencing that by a 7-year partnership with the U.S. Marine Corps Reserve's Toys for Tots program, and that should be coming out shortly. Donations are accepted at any station, and they're doing a COVID-safe drive on Friday. So I'll just keep my, that'll be my remarks for now, just to say I'm incredibly proud of this organization. We've got a lot of things going on, and I would be glad to answer any questions in the time that is left, Madam Chair.
Chief Priest. Does anyone have any questions for Chief Priest? Nope. Oh, Mayor Cantor.
I have one comment and actually a couple comments and a quick question. Comments are, we are incredibly appreciative. We know that things have gotten literally hot, on many levels. So really appreciate all you're doing. Emergency medical dispatch, that change, I don't know if I know you kind of rushed through it, but it is a significant change and does really streamline the efficiency in the department. And I just want to highlight that for everybody. And I want to congratulate and thank you for that, for both chiefs for making that happen. I think that's a really, one of the things I think that COVID highlighted is the need to make things more efficient where we can. And this has been in the thought process for a lot of people, and I think in the works for a while, but to have it actually implemented is really good. My question actually is about vaccinations, and just I was just wondering if you could give the committee an update on where you are as far as paramedics administering vaccines, if there's anything further that you have on that. I know you had looked into the being able to be allowed to do that at some point.
Yes, Mayor, I apologize. I did try and skip over some things in the interest of time, but certainly the fire department has been engaged with the health district very closely. We're monitoring the vaccine rollout, and we are working with them to provide some paramedics who would be available to assist with the administration of the vaccine if that was the need. We are still working with the state of Connecticut and the health district to make sure that the paramedics can do that within the scope of their licensure. So we are in a standby while they work out some of the legal logistics at the state level. I hope that answers your question, Mayor.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, Mayor Cantor, thank you so much. I just really wanted the committee to be aware that you are on top of it. Is really what my goal was there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Cantor. Anybody else have any questions for Chief Priest? Okay. All right. I'm turning it over to Chief Riddick for your report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Briefly, I'd just like to take a moment publicly for us to have our thoughts and prayers for the Waterbury police officer who was shot today. I know this individual as well as his father. He's a second-generation officer. Thank the good Lord that he'll be okay. And fortunately, he was wearing a vest. Otherwise, he probably would not still be among the living. So we want to acknowledge the dangers that still are out there to our police officers, whether it's nationwide or locally. On that vein, quickly, on November 23rd, our community support unit attempted to stop a motor vehicle. The vehicle took off, but along the way, they threw out a .22 caliber Glock handgun that we recovered. On November 28th, we were able to make 2 arrests of juveniles in the Westmont area for breaking into cars. And on yesterday, our community support unit, CSU, during a motor vehicle stop, arrested 2 individuals who attempted to flee, were able to stop stick the car for crack cocaine, marijuana, and 105 bags of fentanyl. So that stuff is out there. We've seen an increase, as you've seen statewide, with some of the violence and the drugs. So, and the common factor with all 3 of these was a vehicle. And when that officer got shot today, it was a vehicle. And by the way, that vehicle was stolen. another theme. And then lastly, I'll close with this. As part of our Community Trust Action Plan, we're still updating it. We are now down to 3 vendors for our body cam, and we will probably start doing T&E, it's our hope, in early January, and have a full report within maybe 60 to 90 days after that, depending upon the accessibility by the vendors. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Riddick. Are there any questions for Chief Riddick? No questions. Chief Riddick, I have a question. Are you seeing, now that it's getting colder, an uptick in vehicle theft or burglary of cars, especially those cars that are being warmed up in the early morning hours?
Actually anticipated that, but it hasn't been as stark as we thought it was going to be. 2020, it's been steady. Our Part 1 crimes, our burglaries and our larcenies are up about 25 to 30%, but our violent crime is down 2%. So we're in the middle right now overall. I'll take what we have. Obviously, we want to decrease on the Part 1 crime, but our violent crime is still trending down.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, so that brings me to other staff reports. Mr. Hart, do you have anything?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Matt Hart, Town Manager. Something Chief Riddick and I had talked about, if I could cede a little bit of my time to him, if he could talk about our good work with Interval House and a grant that we're likely to receive that will enable us to really provide more assistance to victims of domestic violence. And I want to credit and thank Mayor Cantor for introducing both Chief Riddick and myself to the director of Interval House. We've had some very good conversations with her in recent weeks. So I would like to, through you, turn to Chief Riddick just to talk a little bit about that.
Thank you, sir. And through you, Madam Chair. Again, kudos to the mayor for bringing this relationship and establishing this partnership with the police department and Interval House. The director's name is Mary Jane Foster, a marvelous woman. Interval House provides safe housing, training, food, clothing, I mean, pretty much you name it, to victims of domestic violence. I think most importantly, well, equally as important, is some direction for them. What they provide is that gap between law enforcement making arrest or not making arrest and a social service component with anonymity, which is extremely important for these victims of domestic violence or for those who could be on the cusp of domestic violence. They've developed which they call a shoehorn, and they dropped off, I don't know, hundreds of those to the police department. And part of the information that's included in this shoehorn, it's just like a ticket, if you will, with a perforated edge. And the individual, when they have this, they can cut this off. It has the information for Interval House, phone numbers that they can contact, and they can slide it into their shoe. And at the appropriate time, when they're safe and alone, they can access this information and make a phone call. I think it's wonderful. Mary Jane is committed. She's a piece of work in a very positive way. And again, I want to give kudos to the mayor for this and establishing and being persistent for this partnership.
Thank you, Chief. That's powerful, especially for those who may be watching us tonight. I know during this time, it's very daunting, and I know that anxiety is running high and frustration is running high, and we're all adults, but unfortunately, some adults are unable to exercise self-control, and it's usually those who, if you want to consider them weaker, but maybe those who are not as assertive are usually the victims, and even those who you probably wouldn't think is a victim. So this is important information, and I'm glad that our PD is going to be in partnership with the Interval House, and I'm looking forward for more information to come.
And if I could just add one more point, I know time is important. We did hold with the houses of worship yesterday. We just informed them of this service. So the rabbis and the pastors of the various religious institutions were also introduced to Interval House. And again, kudos to the mayor and the town manager for pushing that forward. So thank you.
Again, thank you as well. Mr. Hart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Matt Hart, Town Manager. Chief, forgive me if I missed it, but I think Ms. Foster is also working on obtaining grant funding for us for what they call embedded staff working within the department.
That is correct, and I like the delicate way you keep feeding me, so I appreciate that. Yes, so one thing, I mentioned at a previous public safety meeting that we have DCF investigator. We had one embedded in the police department as a liaison in-house. As a result of COVID, we had to stop that for obvious reasons. And what Mary Jane had promised and is on the cusp of coming through with is providing funding for that same type of service from Interval House to have one of their personnel embedded in the police department. I think it's awesome. It's my understanding Hartford has an embedded personnel from Interval House, East Hartford, as well as Manchester. So we will be joining them, and it's amazing what a connection can do and where it could lead to as far as possibilities. So thank you, sir, for the reminder. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hart and Chief Riddick. And I just want to point out that I'm happy to hear and to learn how we're beginning to explore our options and utilize our resources in some different areas. I know that there was some discussion about this in the summer, and we were brainstorming. And so it's just good to see some of the positive discussion that's coming out of that. And how we're actually putting some action steps in place. And as a result, we have some real tangible objectives that we're going to pursue. So I think, again, kudos to all. You know, what a beautiful way to end such a challenging year. These are good gifts that we can go into 2021 with. So again, thank you, for your leadership, and thank you all for thinking outside of the box as well. So I guess the last item on the agenda before I adjourn is any future agenda items that anybody would like to introduce for our next meeting. Does anybody have anything? Okay. All right. Well, it's 7:40, and without objection, I would like to adjourn the meeting, and I don't believe that we're going to meet again until next year. So for those who are not going on to the town council meeting, I just want to wish everybody a very happy holiday, a very healthy new year, and please stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Blanks, Madam Chair, and we're going to go right into the council meeting. So I hope that's okay with everybody. Hope your bodies can take it. So this is going to be a fairly brief council meeting. But I do want to, I'm going to call the meeting to order, and we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and then I'm going to make a couple comments. So the meeting is called to order. This is the December 8th, 7:30 Town Council meeting, 12/8/2020. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you can stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Ms. LeBrough.
Ms. Fay? Is Ms. Fay here? Present. Ms. Blanks?
Here.
Ms. Cantor?
Here.
Mr. Davidoff? I know he was restarting his computer. So, Mr. Gold?
Here.
Ms. Kerrigan? Ms. Kerrigan? Mr. Sweeney?
Here.
That's Ms. Kerrigan. Mr. Sweeney? Mr. Winograd?
Here.
Mr. Williams?
Here.
Mr. Davidoff, are you on? I'm sure he'll let us know when he gets connected.
Thank you, Ms. LeBreau. And Mr. Hart, if you don't mind texting Mr. Sweeney, I just want to make sure that he's aware. If you could, that would be much appreciated.
Will do, Mayor.
Thank you. I just want to remind, well, first I want to start that December 8th, obviously 1941, it is a day that will live in infamy, according to Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And I actually went to Hawaii on my honeymoon and toured Pearl Harbor and talked to people that survived that attack. And it was a really probably maybe my husband will find offense to this, but one of the most memorable things of my honeymoon. So it was a very, very powerful of few moments. And I've been married almost 36 years. So that was a long time ago. And many of those people are gone and can't tell their stories. Only 2 survivors from USS Arizona remain alive right now from that attack. But 2,403 Americans were killed and 1,143 were injured, and it changed the course of history for the world. But I also want to remember that I think people are going to talk about this time as being an infamous time. We have COVID, 14,823,129 people diagnosed as of noon today, 282,785 deaths. And just in the last 7 days, 15,484 deaths from COVID. So, I mean, it actually puts it in perspective when you put things next to each other of this time in our lives. So, as I don't know who was present at the meeting before, but we know West Hartford numbers are going up, and that is a real point of concern to all of us. And we know what we need to do. We need to wear masks. We need to physical distance. And we need to obviously practice hygiene, but physical distancing in this time of holiday season is very, very, very challenging and hard, but it is life-saving and essential for us to protect each other and our community. And so I urge you all to practice that. So now we will go to the public forum. Any resident or taxpayer of the town who wishes to address the council regarding any item on the agenda which is not otherwise the subject of public hearing may call in at 408-418-9388. That's 408-418-9388. Access code 132-593-3651. Again, access code 132-593-3651. Madam Moderator, are there any callers on the line?
Good evening, Madam Mayor. No, there are not.
Okay, we will wait for 15 seconds and then move on. If there's no, just let me know if there's caller. I'll just pause for just a few seconds.
Will do.
Okay, no callers?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Madam Moderator. Okay, this proclamation has been long in coming. We had some scheduling issues, and I think the importance of having our leadership on this receive this proclamation. The chief of police is here, and I am appreciative for him being here. We had a public safety meeting prior to this council meeting, and I also see Assistant Chief Coppinger is still on, and we're so appreciative of you still being here. so we can embarrass you a little bit more. And say thank you and thank you and thank you. So we'll start with the 100th Police Department, and I'm actually going to go into the proclamation for Mr. Coppinger as Assistant Chief Coppinger as well, because I think although it was already delivered, and I'm trying to find it on because it's on my phone and not printed for me. It is, sorry, it is, was given to him already. So, whereas the West Hartford Police Department has reached an important milestone with its 100th anniversary, and whereas the West Hartford Police Department was established in 1920 with 7 officers, each representing a section of town, an appropriation of $400 was approved by the Finance Board for the new police force. Each officer would receive a salary of $25 a year and a private telephone at his home so he could be reached at any hour of the day. And whereas over the course of a century, the West Hartford Police Department has been guided by the leadership of 10 police chiefs: Benjamin I. Miller, Joseph F. Brogan, Walter A. Sandstrom, Vincent B. Holbert, William P. Rush, Francis G. Reynolds, Robert R. McHugh, James J. Strelacci, Tracy G. Gove, and Vernon Riddick Jr. Whereas today, the West Hartford Police Department is the 10th largest municipal police department in the state of Connecticut, with an authorized strength of 131 sworn officers and more than 20 full-time civilian employees. The West Hartford Police Department recruits highly qualified candidates, trains and retrains its officers to maintain high standards of professional skill and ethical conduct, and insists that its officers maintain those standards both on and off duty. And whereas the West Hartford Police Department is organized into 3 main divisions: patrol services, investigative services, and support services. In addition, it has many specialized law enforcement teams, including a bicycle squad, a canine unit, a traffic enforcement division, a community relations division, an emergency services unit, professional standards unit, and animal control division. Police cruisers are equipped with state-of-the-art technology, including in-car computers and video recorder systems. And whereas the West Hartford Police Department believes in community policing, a strategy that calls for high police visibility in the community, open lines of communication between police and the people it serves. This mission has guided the police department when West Hartford was a rural farming town with 8,854 residents in 1920 to the vibrant community of 63,268 residents that is nationally recognized as one of the best cities in America because of its low crime, top-rated schools, first-rate municipal services, solid home values, and thriving business districts. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that on behalf of the Town Council and the residents of West Hartford, I, Mayor Sherry G. Cantor, do hereby recognize this centennial milestone and proclaim November 10th, we're only a month late, as West Hartford Police Department Day in West Hartford, but you can have today as well. So we are so grateful for the dedication on the service, and it just shows actually right before this meeting, we did again have our public safety meeting, and it is a reminder of how cooperative and what a partnership the West Hartford Police Department is with the town, and we're so grateful for your service. And Chief, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you,
Chief
Madam.
Riddick?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate this on behalf of the entire police department. To be in existence for a century says a lot. To maintain the consistency of excellence says a lot. And to be part of this tremendous community says a lot. You listed the 10 chiefs, but I'm sure if you were to interview each one of them, all the credit and everything goes to our personnel who we work with. They are the testament. They are the glue. Those are the individuals who dedicate themselves and provide the services to the town of West Hartford over these past 100 years. I'm just very pleased to be a part of it, a small part of it, as well as my command staff that's here this evening. So we just want to say in closing, 1,000,001 thank yous, and may God continue to bless all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And again, I'm sorry for your loss in the not for your loss, but the tragedy in Waterbury. And thank gosh there wasn't a loss. Thank God there wasn't a loss. And we are so grateful for all that you do every day, the whole department. And now I just want to highlight Assistant Chief Coppinger, who has served this community with such dignity and passion and compassion for so many years. And I've worked with him for a long time, and I've seen such a remarkable, strong, and sensitive gentleman. And you're going to be missed, and I want to thank you so much. So here's the formal proclamation. Whereas the health and vitality of a community is reflected in the participation of its citizens in those activities that further the strength of the town. Whereas Assistant Chief Coppinger will retire from town services on February 1st, 2021. And whereas Assistant Chief Coppinger was hired by the West Hartford Police Department on May 31st, 1990, and appointed Assistant Police Chief on August 25th, 2013, and was appointed Interim Chief of Police for the West Hartford Police Department from November 2017 to May 2018, and has served the citizens of West Hartford for over 30 years with dedication, honor, and distinction. Whereas Assistant Chief Coppinger focused his leadership on collaborating and maintaining ties with the West Hartford community, and while concurrently serving the country in the Connecticut National Guard with deployments in support of Operation Desert Storm, the 2001 Homeland Defense Detail, and the war in Afghanistan. He was selected as the Non-Commissioned Officer of the Year 4 times and as the Senior Non-Commissioned Officer of the Year. And whereas Assistant Chief Coppinger has received many awards, including 5 recognition awards and 2 police merit awards, and has served as the commanding officer of the Office of Field Operations, the commanding officer of the Training Division, Patrol Division, Special Investigations Unit, and the Emergency Services Unit. And whereas Assistant Chief Coppinger balanced the needs of the community, the needs of the town, and those of his officers in a caring and passionate manner. Now therefore be it proclaimed that on behalf of the Town Council of West Hartford and the residents of West Hartford, I, Mayor Sherry G. Cantor, do hereby extend sincere appreciation to Assistant Chief Daniel P. Coppinger for his commitment to the town of West Hartford, and proclaim November 23rd, which is when we actually gave this to him when the department was partially together, not completely, as Daniel P. Coppinger Day in West Hartford. And I hope it was a good day. And we were joined by his wonderful family, who are, so proud of him. And I know he is such a great family man. So I just want to start with a little applause and a couple words for Assistant Chief. I don't know if you will. If you're
Yes, Mayor. Yes. Thank you so much. And I've been thanking so many people today. I'll be brief. I just want to say it's been such an honor and a pleasure working with all of you, as well as the other staff and departments throughout the town, and my fellow officers here, Chief Riddick, Chief Tara, Mr. Manager, all the members of the Town Council and the Public Safety Committee. And I've learned, and this is something that's important, being a police officer has made me a better human being. I've learned so much. I've worked with such a diverse community here in West Hartford, and it's been nothing but a pleasure. I've been very, very blessed to have such a wonderful career and be surrounded by such wonderful people. So thank you all so much. Thanks.
Thank you, Assistant Chief. Much appreciated again, and wishing you good health, much joy and happiness in your next chapter of your life. And again, gratitude to your family. All right, and the last proclamation is, I see that we are joined by Adrienne Billings-Smith, who is co-chair of our Human Rights Commission, and she's going to just say a few words after I present the proclamation to update you on the reading of the declaration. So, whereas December 10th, 1948 is the date that the General Assembly of the United Nations approved the Universal Declaration of Human Rights declaring that recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. And whereas the Universal Declaration of Human Rights calls for all people and governments at all levels to promote and respect the rights that it recognizes. And whereas the town of West Hartford and the West Hartford Human Rights Commission are committed to ensuring the human rights of all West Hartford residents and visitors, protecting them from discrimination, and encourages equality of treatment of all people, regardless of race, color, religious, creed, sex, sexual orientation, civil union status, gender identity or expression, marital status, familial status, genetic information, age, economic status, lawful source of income, national origin or ancestry, or present or past history of physical, mental, intellectual, or learning disability. And whereas 2020 is the 72nd anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and an opportunity for the town of West Hartford to commemorate this event and recommit itself to the broader achievement of human rights for all residents. Now therefore be proclaimed that on behalf of the Town Council and the residents of West Hartford, I, Mayor Sherry G. Cantor, proclaim December 10th, 2020 as Human Rights Day in the town of West Hartford and encourage all residents to work together in the coming year to advancing progress towards fulfilling the full range of human rights contained in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And again, I want to thank the Human Rights Commission for starting this new tradition of actually reading the declaration. And I'll go now to Adrienne Billing-Smith. Madam Moderator, if you can make sure she's off mute, to say a few words about the actual reading and introduce yourself for the council, for those of us who have not met you. Thank you.
Hi, I think everyone's kind of met me at this point. My name is Adrienne Billing-Smith, the new co-chair of the Human Rights Commission. I want to thank you, Mayor Cantor, and the council members for, again, recognizing the importance of the Human Rights Day and continuing the hard work for a more equitable and just community and for human rights for all. On behalf of the Human Rights Commission, we invite you to celebrate with us on December 10th, virtually, at 7:30 p.m. In this event, we'll be reading the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, as well as showcasing performances by local artists. And we are pleased to announce that we have Dr. Takesha Everett as our keynote speaker, who is the Executive Director of Health Equity Solutions. So we do encourage you to join us on December 10th. The event can be viewed on various channels and on websites. So thank you and stay safe.
Thank you, Adrienne. Again, I appreciate all your efforts and on your mission of helping guide us and supporting human rights. And enjoy this event. And it's a wonderful way to welcome the first night of Hanukkah too. So there you go. Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate it. Okay, so it's on YouTube, WAC TV, and wonderful. Thank you. All right. Have a good evening. Thanks for joining us. Now we will go to the consent calendar. And without objection, and you're all files, and I don't see everybody, so if you can't have an objection, please text me. Consent calendar. Without objection, I move that we place items 5A, 5B, 6C, 7B, and 7C on the consent calendar. I'll give you a minute to look at that. And are there any objections? Okay, seeing none, I do actually want, for the town clerk, want to recognize that Leon Davidoff and Liam Sweeney have both joined the meeting. So that's for the record. Okay, without objection, I move adoption for the consent calendar. And again, hearing no objection. Seeing no objection, motion carries. Approval of minutes. That's on consent, sorry. The next item is 7A, resolution authorizing the town manager to participate in the State Homeland Security Grant Program. Mr. Hart.
Thank you, Mayor. Matt Hart, Town Manager. Did you want to do that item before the reports?
My bad. The print's a little small. I meant to enlarge it and I didn't. And I'm sorry. No, we want to first go to your report and then we will go to that business item. Sorry. Town manager's report. We'll start with that and then corporation council's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, Matt Hart, Town Manager. I know in our Public Safety Committee meeting that we had earlier this evening, we talked about the fact that our cases of COVID-19 have been increasing over the past several weeks, and that's certainly a phenomenon that the state as a whole is contending with. I looked at the most recent data issued by the state, and it changes almost daily, as you all know, and my statistics differ a little bit from what Chief Priest cited earlier, but our average daily rate per 100,000 population is up to 31.5, and I think that's the highest it's been since the state began utilizing that statistic. And the data shows also, unfortunately, 164 West Hartford residents have lost their lives to COVID-19. I heard a higher number this morning, and probably has to do with when the count is performed. But this all means that we need to continue to take this very seriously in following the protocols that the state has set. And I want to thank the council, for your leadership and your support as we continue to respond to the pandemic. As a staff, as a team, working collaboratively with the school district, working collaboratively with the town council, Chamber of Commerce, any number of key stakeholders. Very, very important that we continue to do that. Moving on to touch on a couple of other items, and I did post my report in board docs. You can take a look at it at your convenience. I'll just touch on a few additional items here. Stroll your own way. We talked about that previously, and this is a different way in which we're going to recognize and patronize, hopefully, our local businesses, a way in which is safe for under the COVID-19 protocols. Stroll your own way. This is an event that encourages everyone to explore all of our commercial districts across town, and really to appreciate the quality of the goods and services that our local businesses provide here, and their efforts to bring holiday joy to our community. And the details and the schedule of events is posted on the Chamber of Commerce's website. You can also obtain a link off the town's website as well. Moving on, a couple of additional staff reports under the area of building inspection. Those of you, next time when you come to Town Hall, you'll see we're doing some work outside of our service window for the building inspection office. We want to be able to provide some overhead cover during the colder months, also a more secure footing. So today we installed a paver walkway, and we'll be installing a new awning in the near future, reserving 4 parking spaces for those who are looking to get their permits and work with the building division. And I want to thank the Departments of Plant and Facilities and the Department of Public Works for their assistance with that effort. Moving on, a couple of other things I'd like to touch on next under Leisure and Social Services. The Town That Cares Fund really could use the community's help with this, and the community has been extremely supportive in years past, this year as well. The best and safest way that you can assist our needy residents, folks who may be struggling financially due to the loss of a job for any number of reasons, the best way you can support them is a monetary donation to the Town That Cares Fund. It will really go a long way to helping folks make rent, put food on the table, address any number of other critical needs. So your donations can be mailed to the Town That Cares Fund, Town of West Hartford, 50 South Main, 06107. And we appreciate any and all contributions in any amount. Staying with that theme, the West Hartford Public Library, for the last few years, they've been running an annual kindness project, and this year they're running their 4th annual initiative, and it's underway at all 3 library branches. What's the kindness project all about? Under this initiative, the library is collecting hygiene products as well as cleaning supplies to benefit the community at large, also benefits our food pantry and the Fern Street Universalist Church, their very popular backpack program. So we have placed collection bins outside of all of our library buildings, and that's where you can drop off your donations. And we're picking them up daily. Moving on to Public Works, I wanted to note that our annual leaf bag collection program is ending soon. So it will be ending on Friday, December 18th. So really encouraging all of their residents, if you haven't had a chance to clean up your lawn as of yet, please do so you can bring those leaf bags out to the curb and we can pick them up by that date. If you're not able to get them out by that date, you can certainly continue to bring those materials to our transfer station at Brixton Street. And the last item I wanted to touch on, Mayor, I wanted to extend my congratulations to Cindy Perini, our Assistant Town Clerk, who has been with us for, I believe it's 6 years now. She is going to be leaving West Hartford on Friday the 18th. She's received a promotion. She's going to become the town clerk for the town of Plainville, one of our neighboring communities. I want to congratulate Cindy on her promotion and thank her for her years of service to the town. I also want to thank her for the support that she has provided my office personally. And under Ms. LeBreau's leadership in working with the Human Resources Department, we will conduct a recruitment process to fill Ms. Perini's position. But congratulations to her. And a safe and healthy holiday season to everyone. I'll stop there, Mayor, and take any questions that you or your colleagues may have.
Thank you, Mr. Hart, and I also want to thank Cindy and congratulate her on her new position. She's been a huge help to this body for sure. So, any questions for the town manager? I don't see everybody's tile, so if you have anything. All right, I don't see anything, and we will go to Mr. Dodge, Corporation Council report.
Madam Mayor, I have no formal report. However, we will require an executive session to discuss the potential purchase or lease of real estate. However, I do not anticipate that the council will be taking any action following the executive session. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody may have.
Thank you, Mr. Dodge. Any questions for Corporation Council? We will be seeing him later. Okay. All right, now we go to new business, Mr. Hart. A resolution authorizing the town manager to participate in the State Homeland Security Grant Program. And we will go to you for an explanation and then I'll make the motion. So, Mr. Hart.
Thank you, Mayor. Matt Hart, Town Manager, and we are looking for the council's support and approval of this resolution. This is a program that's been in place since 2004. It's a grant program that's administered by the Connecticut Department of Emergency and Homeland Security, otherwise known as DEMIS. West Hartford is in Region 3. That includes 41 municipalities. Most of them are within the Capital Region Council of Governments. And the Capital Region Council of Governments, or CROG, plays a vital role in coordinating the grant application and the distribution of the equipment that is received under this grant program. So funds are used to finance a whole variety of needs. Some previous examples, monies to support the regional hazmat team, bomb squad, any number of pieces of equipment that can be utilized during an emergency, such as a critical weather event. and the pandemic as well. These monies can also fund training. Another example, specifically for West Hartford, those of you who are on the Public Safety Committee, I think you're familiar with our Bearcat vehicle that was purchased with these grant funds. So respectfully requesting the council's authorization of this resolution, Mayor. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the manager before we move to adopt? Okay, I don't see any. So without objection, I move adoption. Is there any objection? I don't see any objection. Hearing none, the motion carries. And then now we will go right to announcements. Just a little bit more on the help through the Town That Cares. Our social services agency invites a group of people are welcome to adopt a family through the social services. So each group will receive a list of requested items for a family. Unwrapped gifts would need to arrive at Town Hall before December 21st. All the names are kept confidential, but you would receive ages so you could buy appropriate gifts. It's a great way to support a needy family during the holiday season, in addition to supporting the Town That Cares through donations. Stroll Your Way, you heard about that, but what I would urge everybody to do is to take a picture of a business that you're going to and share something, because these businesses many of them, this is the season that they do their largest amount of business, and we really have to support them in whatever way we can. And being elected officials or being town officials, it's really nice to see that activity. So I urge you to do that and to do what you can to again remind people to shop local, support West Hartford businesses. Magic Mailbox. Kids can place letters in to Santa in the Magic Mailbox at Elmwood Community Center and receive a message back from the North Pole. The mailbox is outside near the main entrance of the Elmwood Community Center now through December 18th. The River 105.9 is going to be at Blueback Square. They've teamed up to offer guests a chance to take a selfie with a virtual Santa on December 12th, 12:30 to 2:30. The first 10 people or families to arrive will receive an envelope of swag with prizes provided by iHeartMedia, including lift tickets to local ski mountains, passes to the Science Center, and tickets to holiday light shows, and more. And the Toys for Tots collection, I think you heard a little bit, the fire chief mentioned that. That will be held on Saturday, December 12th, 2 to 4 p.m. at Blueback Square. Merry Little Movie Night. Blueback Square will also be holding a drive-in movie night on the rooftop of the Memorial Garage on Saturday, December 12th, 6 to 8, featuring Elf. Tickets are free, but must be requested in advance via Eventbrite. 1 ticket per vehicle, and tickets are limited. Movie night to-go meals are available for purchase and curbside pickup at 5 Blueback Square restaurants. The Nutcracker Performance, tune in to WHCI. Sorry, I'm getting an error message on my my machine here, on my computer. Oh, Lord. 1 second. I lost y'all. Okay, there we go. That WACI will be on December 13th at 1 p.m. Chabad of Greater Hartford is holding the Drive-In and Park Hanukkah event on the Town Hall parking lot to keep attendees safe and socially distanced. The event will be at 4 p.m. And there are restrictions and require all participants to stay in their vehicles at all times. A giant LED wall and a low-frequency radio station will allow attendees to see and hear festivities. They will watch a master ice carver sculpt a menorah from a raw block of ice and listen to performer Benny Friedman. Upon entering, each car will be reminded of COVID restrictions and be given a kit that contains a menorah, chocolate gelt, Hanukkah cookie, and craft and puzzle. No pedestrians will be permitted. Pre-registration is encouraged at the Chabad House, www.chabadhartford.com/fire. And it will be held rain or shine. All Is Calm Christmas Truce of 1914. The Playhouse Theater Group is presenting All Is Calm, a remarkable true story that relives an astonishing moment in history when a soldier steps into no man's land singing Silent Night. Thus begins an extraordinary night of camaraderie between the Allied troops and German soldiers. They lay down their arms to celebrate the holiday, share food and drink, play soccer, and sing carols. This dramatic retelling weaves together first-hand accounts of World War I soldiers with patriotic tunes, trench songs, and Christmas carols. Stream at home for $20 from December 16th to January 3rd. Visit www.playhouseonpark.org to purchase your viewing pass and learn more. This play was originally scheduled to be produced by Playhouse Theater Group and presented live at Playhouse on Park. Live Nativity at First Church in West Hartford at 12 South Main Street will be on Saturday, December 19, 2020, featuring a camel, donkey, 2 goats, and more. A tableau depicting the scene of the Most Holy of Guests will, of course, include Mary and Joseph, baby Jesus, wise ones, shepherds, and others for a poignant way for our community to mark the week leading up to Christmas. The animals will be handled by Comerford Zoo shepherds. Please visit between the hours of 1 and 4 on the front lawn. A 4-minute SoundCloud recording of the story with musical accompaniment will be accessible on your phone. Visitors are encouraged to bring earbuds or earphones along with their cell phones to physically distance and wear face masks. So wear your earphones. Free parking is accessible via the Farmington Avenue entrance to the church. And go to whfirstchurch.org. Any other announcements for our public? Okay, seeing none, without objection, I move that we go into executive session pursuant to Section 1-206D of the Connecticut General Statutes to discuss the selection of a site or the lease, sale, or purchase of real estate and adjourn immediately thereafter. Is there any objection? There being no objection, the motion carries. The public portion of the meeting is now over, and members of the council should sign onto the separate